Hello, JMU Nation. Dave Thomas, radio voice for JMU football and men's basketball. Back spending some time with a former JMU football player who is either at the NFL level now or spent some time at the NFL level. We're talking to a fellow who a lot of folks remember and have even seen around campus some over the last couple of years. We're excited about that, and we'll get into that coming up in just a few minutes. Dorian Brooks joining us. Dorian, how are you, first of all?
I'm doing well. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing fantastic. Now, before we sort of get into football talk, I understand there's been a new addition to the team there. Tell us about your family, if you will.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. So the Brooks family has grown by one. You know, we are no longer in zone coverage. We switched to man-to-man. So we have my daughter, Brielle. She is, a little over 2 months now, and she's got a ton of personality already. She's going to give her big brother a run for the money.
How has that changed the dynamic in your house in the middle of a pandemic when you're adding a newborn into the mix?
Yeah, no, it's, learning to, switch from 1 to 2 has been an adjustment, but just mainly a lot of the things of being able to go outdoors and play with them, go for walks, we just have to be extra careful with that. But I mean, it's good because we get that, in-home extra time, and we just have my son running around the house, kind of driving us all crazy.
Well, let's dive into some football conversation here. When you think back on your career at JMU, what are the first few things that really come to mind and what you draw from your time playing for the Dukes?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I think about, we had a great time there, great career. We had a lot of success. But for me, it's the locker room. It's like the behind the scenes stuff, being on the, in the hotels, traveling in the locker rooms, after practice, walking to practice. Back then, I don't know what the guys are doing now, but, it's those things that I think about that I hold near and dearest to my heart, being in the dining hall, eating, having, I was a lineman, so having the food competitions and just some of the crazy stuff that came along with it.
I hear a lot of players say that it's more about the camaraderie, the connection with the team, but there's got to be one game or maybe a couple of games that sort of stand out. When you think back on your career, maybe when you get together with former teammates or you're talking with them via Zoom, as you and I are now, or whatever the case may be, is there a particular game that comes up the most with you?
Well, I just watched one the other day. Here in the North Virginia region, we had the re-airing of the App State JMU game, and it brought back so many memories. Just crazy, just how that game unfolded with them being the number 1 team in the country coming in. I think they had won like at least 1 or 2, championships. They'd beaten Michigan, and so for them to come in and we're down 21-0, and Scotty McGee has that crazy return, and then it was all over from there. It was just so many memories brought back watching that.
As I mentioned, you've been back on campus a few times broadcasting, and we will get into that coming up a little bit later. But have you been on campus with teammates and you look around and go, this isn't the JMU we played for as far as facilities or the number of uniform combinations that are available? Is that something you guys talk about and maybe have a little envy toward?
Oh, absolutely. To this day, I'm still in my feelings that we didn't get black uniforms or, some of the helmet, combinations that these guys get to wear. And there's envy, but it's also, a little bit, it's humbling to know that, we played a part in building the program to where it is. But I'd be lying to you if I said, man, if I could just get to wear some of these uniforms and the helmets, I'm in the group text with some of the former O-line guys, and we talk about it. It's crazy, but everything's great. But JMU's done a great job with that program, and so I'm not surprised.
Was that something that was even on the radar? You guys even talked about, hey man, I'd like to have this, or coach, can we try this? Was that ever even something that came up?
Oh, for sure. We tried to, push the envelope. I remember one time we had a home game. I believe it was North Carolina Central, my junior year, and just to get white pants with the purple top, because JMU back then we wore just purple top, purple pants, and so even that, it was like fighting tooth and nail. But yeah, for sure. It's you want to be different. Some guys are have superstitions about uniform and things like that. But yeah, it was tough back then. So a little hating on the guys now, but they deserve it.
As we said, you spent some time at the professional level, spent some time with the Steelers. Walk us through the process of making the transition from playing at JMU to being in camp with a National Football League team, and maybe what some of your thoughts were in those early days of going into camp.
Yeah, I mean, I can just remember that was one of the most nerve-wracking times of my life, and it's something I've always been highly competitive. Anybody that knows me or played with me, it was never that, but it's just there's so much that comes with it, so much responsibility. But then also, you're learning an entire new system, a new playbook, and then you add that with the star quality and some of the names that we had on the roster, entering the Pittsburgh Steelers when I was there. I mean, it can be overwhelming, but I just remember just having, conversations with myself and just, hey, I belong here. I worked my butt off just like, the next guy. And so just kind of getting yourself into the right mental state to know that one, you can do it, you're capable of it, and just, fighting through it. It's football is football, no matter which level.
You can have those conversations with yourself, but do you recall the point where you started believing it? Like, I do belong here. And maybe even your team started believing it as well. And you sort of felt more a part of the team instead of a new guy trying to make a roster.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, even in the pre-draft process, going to the scouting combine in Indianapolis and, walking next to guys that played at some of the top, programs from some of these, Power 5 conferences and competing with them and, putting up, better numbers than some of the guys. And, that is a confidence boost. Okay, I got this. And then making it to a training camp and getting to put the pads on and have some real physical contact with guys. And, you're making plays. And so that is a constant, that's an additional confidence boost. And so for me, I just remember, being a lineman and someone that, we had to move quite a bit. My first play on pulling and having to make, head-on collision with James Harrison. I was like, okay, this hurt a little bit, but, I belong here. I didn't fall back. I wasn't afraid. So that's when I knew I had something.
Was there a guy that you dreaded? Was it Harrison, the guy that you dreaded having to hit the most? Or maybe it was someone on another team?
No, I wouldn't say there was anyone that I dreaded. But just at that level, that every day you're going to get the best, out of the guys that you're playing some of the top competition. And so it was just, you had to bring it every single down. You couldn't take a play off.
You know how hard it is personally to walk that path, make that roster, and represent JMU on a National Football League team. For you now, as an alum of both the NFL and JMU, when you see a guy out there on the field from Madison, what do you feel? What are your thoughts about that? Seeing a guy like a Raven Green who's doing some things in Green Bay. Tell us, as someone who played it and understands it better than anybody, what your thoughts are.
Well, it's you take a little stock in it. That a little what these guys have gone through. That JMU is great of a program, as we are, we're still at the FCS level. And so to see somebody, make it to the league, it's, you can't help but, put a smile on your face and just really root for those guys. And to see them excel, it's just, it's further validating of that. And so I'm always excited. I always tune into games anyway, but when there's somebody on the roster, whether it's, Green and Tampa Bay or, Marlowe and Buffalo or, Wells and Stinney and Tampa or, the other numerous guys that spread all over the league, you get excited to see that and you really root for them. You want them to be successful.
So when time came to transition from football into your next path, your next chapter, where has that chapter led you? You said you were in Northern Virginia. Tell us what you're doing now.
Yeah, so, it's going on 8 years now. I've been with the Arlington County Police Department. This has really been what I feel a calling for me. I've always had, a passion for service. And, we talk about it all weeks, this week, we're honoring, the service women and men. I come from a military background. And so I knew that, it wasn't going to lead me into the military just due to some of the things in my personal life with, my wife, but I always had a passion for service and I've been, working here and, this is a career field that I really feel like I can make an impact and I've been able to do that, a positive impact in people's lives.
You called it a calling. Playing sports and being committed to being an athlete at the highest level is also a calling. So now that you're in law enforcement, have those two maps crossed over any at all to where some of the things you were doing as a student athlete and as a professional athlete, you're now doing as a professional law enforcement officer.
Yeah, I'd say there are some parallels for sure. You know, being in the locker room, you're going to be around people from all different backgrounds, and so you learn a lot about one another. And you know, for me, I benefit from working in an area that's extremely diverse, and you know, everyone has a different story. And so when you go into what you do, you don't prejudge anyone. You kind of treat people and take it for what it is, and so that's been a good, learning point for me coming into the type of work that I do. And it's been great, just some of the experiences I can draw from my times playing sports, and, it does relate to what I do now.
Tell us specifically about the work you're doing, or what you can tell us about the work you're doing now.
Yeah, so I've spent time in various parts in this career field, but right now I've been a school resource officer for the past few years, and this has probably been one of the most rewarding parts of my career. I get to work with kids specifically really at all levels, elementary, middle school, and high school. And so over the past few months, I've been co-developing a program, a youth outreach program with a partner of mine, and we really want to address some of the issues that have been going on, not just in our area, but, nationwide, a lot of concerns that people are having as pertains to police and, community issues and the criminal justice system. So I'm really excited to get this up and running, and, we'll have some more info hopefully sooner.
So do the students that you work with know about your football background?
Oh yeah, I mean they take one look at me. I've lost some weight since my playing days, when I'm still a relatively bigger guy, and it's kind of one of the more known things about me. But they ask a ton of questions, and we have a lot of Steeler fans in the area, so they definitely know about it.
But talking about trying to be able to reach students, that's a vehicle for you. Your football playing as an athlete is one thing, but the fact you played at the NFL level, that probably makes you more approachable, does it not?
Yes, it's a great icebreaker. I mean, it helps in terms of, that instant connection with a lot of kids, because oftentimes they see the uniform first. And that's something that, obviously the uniform represents a lot, but there's also a lot behind the badge. And it's also even helped with, I've also coached high school football as an assistant offensive line coach at one of the schools up here. And it gets you that instant credibility, because the kids know, hey, if I'm giving you tips on how to play the position, they know that I know what I'm talking about.
How was it for you the first time you're out there, the early days, returning as a coach, where you're not hitting, you're actually giving the instructions? Was that a big transformation for you?
It was, for me, I'm very hands-on. I was a hands-on guy that's how I learned, by doing. If you draw something up on a whiteboard, I'm going to pick up it so much, but if you actually demonstrate it. So for me, oftentimes I'm sweating, just as much as some of the kids when we're out at practice, because I'm actually doing the drills. And, but it's a lot of patience and a lot of understanding that, some of these things, these kids are, like me, they're picking up for the first time. And so it's different, on this side, not having to, put on the pads, and, my body thanks me for it, but it's definitely a transition.
Now, I've got to know, is there a phrase or phrases that Dorian the player hated to hear, but Dorian the coach finds himself using?
I don't think any football player likes the term soft. And so that's one that, I don't use often, but, if I want to get a point across to a young man about their play, that's one I'll throw out. One of the few. Some of the others I won't say.
So, some of a key word to get their attention, huh?
Yes.
Last question for you, Dorian, and we appreciate your time. As we talked about a couple of times in our conversation, you have been back on campus on camera. You doing some work with Kurt Dudley for some of the broadcast. Tell us about how you got into that, and walk us through your thoughts on being on that side of the football world.
Man, Kurt Dudley reached out to me a few years ago and, asked me if I'd be interested in doing some broadcasts as a commentator. And I was taken aback. I was, being someone that I was a kinesiology major at JMU, had no experience in it, but, someone that has the football acumen and the knowledge. I was honored. I told him, hey, I'd love to do it. And then, once we were squared away, I started doing my homework and doing some research and just trying to, watch the game from a different lens and a different perspective, just so I could be prepared for it. And it's been a blast. I look forward to hopefully this coming, season, this fall campaign, if we're able to get out there. But it's been awesome. And it's totally different.
Were you surprised at the amount of work it took to get ready for a broadcast?
Yes, because it's not just, I can't just watch football, just as a casual fan. There's a lot of things that, for me, being a former offensive lineman, I usually have my attention drawn to the line of scrimmage, what they're doing. But now, from this standpoint, I'm looking at defenses, where they're lined up, what coverages they're in. I'm looking at formations, hash points, all of these things, which, back then, other than playing, Madden football and playing offense, I might not have known as much. And so it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun work. And I've talked to, a bunch of guys in the game that have done it. Arthur Moats is a good friend of mine, and he has some experience with it. I've reached out to him on numerous occasions, and it's been great.
Well, it seems like your life is very full now, for sure, between your work and your family and then coaching or broadcasting. There's a lot happening for you, Dory. We appreciate you taking time to spend some time walking down the path back to JMU and through Pittsburgh and, of course, what you're doing now. We wish you guys the best of luck moving forward.
Thanks, Dave. You guys stay safe.